I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and joined by a good friend of the show, Dominic Caggeso. Of course, he runs the Divine Poetry segment show. I don't know what you want to call it. Every
Yeah,
Tuesday, I've been doing that for a long time now.
yeah,
We've had him on also several other times to talk about different content, but really kind of a lot of Dominic's ideas of how he sees history and how it mirrors the kind of what's happening now. Very, very interesting stuff, which again, I don't think I probably need to tell that to you guys now, but Dominic is here again to talk about some of his upcoming projects. And Dominic blows me
yeah.
away. It actually Dominic annoys me like crazy because it's like I'm like the biggest procrastinator in the world, and I'm an idea guy too. I want to write a book. I want to do this and this, and I just never really do it. And I get on Facebook and I feel like every day Dominic is doing something new. It's
Yeah,
annoying, but it's awesome. I really appreciate that about you, Dominic. You've always got new projects coming, and they're
yeah.
always awesome. It's funny, like when I talk
Well,
to Father Zepeda too of Catholic Wire. He
yeah,
has a lot of the same ideas. I think that you would have too. Like, oh, he's an idea man, and
yeah,
so he and I'll talk and like, hey, I was thinking about this. I'm like, wait, I was thinking about this. So it's really cool. So I always appreciate having you on, Dominic, and I'm always excited to hear about your new projects. So I don't know where you want to begin. I know you have
oh,
a publishing company, you have a new book, you have a new series of books. So yeah, wherever you want to start.
exactly. I guess we'll start with the small stuff because so I can talk about my new book, the one I'm really excited about. But first, yeah. So you mentioned a new series book. Well, first of all, by the way, um, I just mentioned to you off air that I mean, I just kind of realized I knew this before, but you have a day job, and I think you probably have two day jobs, and a young family. So you're comparing apples to oranges here. That's one thing, and so quantity and quality are two different things. So I might put out a lot of stuff, but we'll see about the quality of it. I try hard, but anyway. So thank you very much for that. But just take it easy on yourself. um, yeah, so okay, so Glorious Heritage Books. We have a new publishing company, and it's doing pretty well. We're excited about it. We're approaching our 1,000th book sold. We're approaching 1,000 books sold, which is a nice little milestone. Not all the same book, of course, right? But different books. So we're it's gloriousheritagebooks.com. Check it out. We just put out a couple of new titles. We have Great Wives and Mothers, which is a classic. It goes through the lives of great Catholic women, a lot of them saints, some of them not. It was written in the, I think, late 1800s. We also have a new one. It's an old one that we're putting out, Our Lady of Good Counsel. It tells the story of the image of Our Lady of Good Counsel and how it miraculously transported itself from Albania to Genazzano, Italy, and the whole story of the devotion there. It's fascinating. We have some other new ones as well. We have The Miracle Worker of Montreal, which is a story about Brother Andre Bisset, who was performing miracles in the late 1900s, recognized miracles up in Montreal. And we have other books as well. So check them out. I think our prices are reasonable, and we reformat the books so they're easy to read, but we stay true to the original, which is the whole point, I guess.
I saw a comment about that. Maybe you shared that someone was saying how nice it was to find a book that was easy to read, and I'm sure everyone who's had that, who orders books and who reads books, there's really a big difference. You can really tell. I ordered a Bible, okay, and I fully admit I was totally a cheapskate on the Bible. I just was like, hey, here's a Douay Reims, and it's, I don't remember, $30 or so. It was not an
Yeah,
expensive Bible. I
yeah.
fully admit it, and I got it, and it's like even the cover is like printed wrong, and in the inside,
Oh no.
the formatting
Yeah,
is just absolutely atrocious. I mean,
yeah.
like laughably bad, and I think that does matter. It really does. And when
It
you're
matters.
reading,
Yeah,
even if it's a good book, and you're reading through it, and then the words come apart, and the letters aren't spaced correctly, and it really does kind
like,
of throw you
oh
off. So I
no.
appreciate good formatting in a book.
It does. Yeah, a lot of these companies that are doing this, they're just taking, so on the internetarchives.com, which is the Copyright Office, hosts this website, and it has scans of all these old books. There's scans. And so a lot of these companies are taking the image and just plastering it on a page. What we're
Mm-hmm.
doing is taking the text and reformatting it just like any other book you buy, any modern contemporary book, with that kind of formatted text. So it's not just images of the old pages. It's actually, we take the copies, then we have to compare them methodically, page by page, to make sure that the scanner didn't pick up any wrong characters. And yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, a lot of those old ones, it's easy to do what they're doing. It's a little harder to do what we're doing.
But again, in that quality matters, and I hope people appreciate
Yeah,
that well, you maybe that does mean you have to pay $2 more than you're going to pay on wherever for one of these just
mhm.
copy
But
print type publications.
exactly, yeah. Even the same though, we're pricing like even with them or below them, even
Wow,
with that. So
respect.
so yeah, maybe not. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But Well, another project though that it's part of this book project is I'm just starting to butt into this new role that I think I'm butting into as an author. And I never realized that I would like to be an author before. So I've been telling stories to my kids for years. And my wife, she's so subjective, but you're such a great storyteller. Well, I've been studying church history and making cartoons. So I thought to myself, I would like to write a historical fiction series for Catholics about Catholic church history. My plan is to follow a German family, an Italian family, and maybe like an English family, and follow them through the whole course of church history and show how at different epochs and ages of the church, they interact with each other. They interact with things that are happening, for instance, like the Roman persecutions or Martin Luther or any number of major subjects. But what's key about this project is that I want to imbue the books with a love of the papacy. I want to imbue them with a love of the church and church teaching, things that you won't find in any other trad book because they're semi-trads and they will not talk about the greatness of the papacy. So we have a unique perspective, the true perspective of Sedevacantists, and I'm not going to put Sedevacantism into the books until I get to the Vatican II series. Then we'll talk about that, right? Yeah. But in the meantime, I just want to extol the papacy. I'll use the Pope's own words. But anyway, so this book series, of course, I have to write it still. It's just a project in my mind, but I'm ready to go. I already have like the books laid out and how I want it to go, and so we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be cool because then people can trace family lineage. Like they're going to say, "Oh, I'm part German," so maybe we, also would share in the activities and exploits of this one particular German family that they started out as barbarians and then they become the Holy Roman Empire, and now this and that and the other thing. So I hope to weave together a lot of things in this project, and it's going to be maybe for like teenagers kind of thing. So keep an eye out for that. I'm excited about that.
Cool. And is that something? Are you thinking of doing a Kickstarter program or anything like that? I mean, I think that's something that, again I've kind of considered in the past and I've just never had time for it. But we could probably talk about this off air. But it's just an interesting idea because I think that's something that Kickstarter, you can do a Kickstarter project. You have this book series that's coming. People can contribute as you go. So before it's published, that could be an idea because that's something that I think. Again, we talk about this every time, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, kind of, but
no, you're not. That's
but
great.
the creation of good Catholic media,
Yeah.
there's just not much more important out there. I really believe that in something that's new and fresh, but traditional. I mean, it just barely exists. It barely exists, and so if it's YouTube material, if it's cartoons, if it's books, I think it's hugely important, and I think it's something that absolutely everyone should support. And again, everyone just remember again how much money you're spending. Some of you, some of us on Netflix, Amazon, coffees. I think I can't express it enough that we need to make sure we support people who are actually creating good material. So maybe it's a Kickstarter. Maybe it's I know you guys have a Patreon. Go support these guys on Patreon. Because I mean, I know you can say that too on Patreon. If everyone listening to this show who appreciates what Dominic does and what Glorious Heritage does, I know you're not the only one. Go over and give $5 a month on Patreon. Give $5 a month. That's doable for anybody. Anybody can do it. Or $2. Give $2 a month on Patreon, and it actually does make a difference. It really does. So please do that. We'll add the link here. Dominic can maybe throw it up on the screen as well. Because again, this is really. As Dominic said, we also need to make money. We're family men. We have to also support families while we're trying to do these things, and that's easier said than done. So make sure you support them as they go, and especially as Dominic starts this new project. Let's give him a little boost, guys. Go over to Patreon and support them now, so that we can make sure that he can get this done because we need more content. For goodness' sake.
Thank you. I plan on being in it for the long haul. I don't plan on going away.
Awesome.
The only thing that would hinder my time is having to go out and get a full-time job, which I don't have to right now. But I see the day it might be coming, so we're gonna see. But I appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin, very much. Yep, very good. So I guess that brings me to my new book, right? That's what I begged Kevin to do an interview about, and he so graciously accepted. But
anytime,
that's the one. Yeah.
Well, this one's an exciting one, right? And this one that is.
I think so. Yeah.
I would say too, it has the title that's gonna grab people and it's gonna grab your attention. Like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty interesting. But I think it's something that many of us, many Sedevacantists, traditional Catholics, are going to be able to see the title and be like, oh yeah, okay. I bet I kind of know where this is going. But I also bet that it has things that you there it is, Vatican II and the Antichrist, and it's I'm sure it also has things that people aren't expecting though. Is that the case?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Which is so exciting, and they're not expecting. I don't think, maybe you are, but I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth. But I think that whether you're expecting it or not, it is incredibly consoling and vindicating for our position as Sedevacantists. And that's what I'm so excited about. And it also just it's filled with a love of the church and pointing back to the truths of the faith, to the what's the word, greatness of the Holy Mass, of the papacy. It all centered around those subjects, and it all centers around them in the context of what we've been doing in State of Acontis. Before I delve into it, which I'm excited to do, a certain gentleman from Fide Email, he contacted me. He's a new acquaintance and I guess a friend. I don't know him that well, but I do consider him a friend. He graciously offered to sponsor this new book. So the first 50 people who order a copy from this point forward, he'll contribute $10 off the price of the book. And again, it's this gentleman and his company that are offering this $10 off for the first 50 orders from this point going forward. I wish I could say that I would apply that to all the pre-orders, but it's not my money, so I just got to do what he says. So, but anyway, so that's Fide,
and that's Fide. So can you spell that for me?
Sure. I'm going to say it's FID. I'll put the link on the screen and some graphics on here too.
Oh yeah, I always forget that. See, I do shows with Dominic and I forget he does the work afterwards. So no, perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that we actually had one or two shows where he had us sponsor, or he sponsored us way back when. Nice. But again, it's a great example of me just not, actually following up on anything and doing the work to stay in touch. I just don't have the time. I have the time to jump on and talk with someone for an hour. The other stuff, the extraneous stuff, just slips through, and that's just kind of how it is. If I was actually on top of things, our channel would probably be a lot bigger. But that's
you're only one man.
That's life, right? That's what do you do? It's fine, but no, absolutely. I think that we know for sure that we can't trust these big name emails.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it? Yahoo? What was it? 5 or 6 years ago, Yahoo came out the email, and they're just like, guys, sorry, but I think it was something like 90% or something like that. It was some gigantic percentage of their email addresses were likely, hacked or were definitely put at risk. And it was just kind of like, sorry, whoops, our bad. And that's not even taking into account. Yeah, whoops, right. Sorry, all your private information. But if you look at Gmail, Google, they do take our information, maybe not as much on Gmail, and they're selling it. I worked for a radio station. Sorry to go off track, but just real quick.
No, it's fine.
I worked for a radio station, and we spent several days learning how to target people, and it's pretty much how are we selling our online content. And that was disturbing. I mean, how much information you can get on a single person, what they how old they are, where they eat, what they like to buy, lots of really disturbing stuff. And that was a radio station. That was just some random little radio station that could already get this information from some other company. So imagine what the Google or the government can do. So anything 100%. You can do to protect yourself online, and Fide email, I think sounds like is a great one. So I support it absolutely.
It can't be any less secure than Google. Right. So,
for goodness. And again, if it's run by a traditional Catholic, we should support that. Guys, we got to do this. Why is it that it's always the Jews and the Mormons and everybody else is like, hey, a Mormon sees it's a Mormon company and boom, you're going to support it. And the Jews do it. Lots of people do it. I think the Protestants do it. It's like, why are the Catholics the only group of people who don't say, that's a Catholic company, I'm going to go and really get behind them? We got to get better about that. We got to stop being cheap. We got to say, hey, this is a Catholic guy. We're going to go support him. And speaking for myself too, I am just as bad as anybody else, but we got to get better about that because that's part of the way forward. Anyway, okay,
good, onward. Very good. Okay, so I don't mind that at all. That was great. My new book. So the book is entitled Vatican II and Antichrist, and so I'll put a picture on the screen here. And so there's a painting. I go through this in the forward of the book, or the preface of the book. There's a painting in the 1500s, and I'll put the painting on the screen. It's by a painter, Luca Signorelli, and it was during the Renaissance. And in the Orvieto Cathedral, which is somewhere, I think, in the environment of Rome, I think north of Rome, he painted a mural on the wall. It's called The Preaching of Antichrist. And so in this painting, there's this big cathedral in the background, and there's these black figures going into the cathedral. But in the foreground, you have a figure that's painted to look like Christ, although with different coloring and somewhat kind of like off-color tones. And then right behind this figure that looks like Christ, here I'll just put, for you can see it personally here. So there's that painting, and behind is is Satan whispering into the ears of this Christ figure, and his hand is coming through in such a way that you don't know if that's the hand of Satan or the hand of the Antichrist. And so I took that painting and I altered it a little bit. And instead of the clothes of the gospel figure of Christ, which is, the traditional clothes we see him in, the robes and the flowing gown, I put on a papal garment to signify that the Pope is the vicar of Christ. And so, he's Christ's representative on earth. If we had to say, where is Christ as an actual person and anywhere in the world at any given point in time, it would be the Pope. The Pope is in place of Christ. And the popes have said amazing things that equated themselves to Christ. Like Pope Leo XIII said, we hold the place of God on earth, statements like that. So taking Catholic theology on the papacy, I just incorporated that into the cover of my book, saying that here we have a false Christ who is clearly being whispered to by Satan in his ear. I mean, my goodness, how can we deny that? So that's the cover of the book. The whole overall thrust of the book, the overall concept centers around basically Catholic theology, in the sense that as traditional Catholics and as Catholics for Vatican II, we know by our catechism where Christ is and who Christ is in the world today. Christ is present in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. The Holy Eucharist is his body, blood, soul, and divinity. The priest is an altar of Christus. The Pope is the vicar of Christ. The Church is the mystical body of Christ. Saints are also other Christs as well. The priest is, so Christ is present through the Church, literally and physically, and also he's represented by the papacy and things like that. So if someone's going to come along and impersonate Christ and also take the place of Christ, meanwhile deceiving the elect, if possible, then there could be no better fulfillment of that, I argue in this book, than an anti-church, an anti-pope, an anti-mass, false saints, false priests. Everything that was made to manifest Christ to us through the church is now being mocked and mimicked, and also blasphemously by the anti-popes, anti-church, anti-mass, anti-priests. And so much so that, let's say that I know our common expectation is for a world leader of some kind to unite the world governments and to build a third temple in Jerusalem and do all those things. And then from there, persecute everyone who won't take the mark of the beast, whatever we interpret that to mean. Even if that all comes to pass, which I don't say necessarily couldn't come to pass, but even if that does come to pass, that person would not be impersonating Christ more than an anti-mass, an anti-pope, an anti-church, and so on and so forth, because he's not, he's centered in the wrong place, So that's the basic overall thrust of the book. Then from that premise, which I kind of established in the preface, then I go through and I use my work through the parallels of church history in the Old Testament to set a foundation to go ahead and show how that's all fulfilled in the course of biblical prophecies from the book of Daniel and the book of the Apocalypse. So that's the structure of the book. So the first book I wrote, Divine Poetry, I try to demonstrate that the entire history of the Catholic Church was entirely and chronologically prefigured by the history of Israel in the Old Testament. And so, he starts with St. Peter and it goes all the way until Vatican II and then beyond. So it's in the books of Vatican II, however, that the term Abomination of Desolation is first introduced into the Bible, into the Old Testament, excuse me. It actually appears only 2 places in the Old Testament. It appears in the book of Daniel, but only in a prophetic way. Daniel prophesies about the abomination, but it occurs as a historical event in the books of the Maccabees. And those are the only 2 places that it actually is mentioned. And so when you go through the whole parallels, you see that Vatican II is being prefigured by the books of the Maccabees, specifically where you have this king Antiochus. He puts up a second altar in the temple. He strips the temple of all its ornaments. He outlaws all traditional Jewish religious practices, and he mandates his new pagan abomination of desolation in Greek worship, and so on and so forth. So I see in that, plus there's many, many corroboratory details that I'm not mentioning now that are in the book that all point to Vatican II, where the same things happen for us in parallel. We have our altars. We have a second altar in Catholic churches. We have all traditional Catholic devotions, practices, litanies, and especially the Trinity Mass are all outlawed or done away with. And then we have on that second altar in our Catholic churches, the Novus Ordo rite. So there's a direct corollary in parallel that is drawn between the Novus Ordo and the Abomination of Desolation. And that's preceded by 2,000 years of parallel church history, to give it context, just to kind of, say that it's all kind of, there's a stability there to these parallels. Anyway, the reason why that correlation is important is because our Lord does mention it. He says, when you see the abomination in the holy place spoken of by Daniel the prophet, flee to the mountains. So it's a prophecy, so it's multi-layered. But all throughout church history, there have been abominations in holy places. And every heretical sect, like the Arians or the Lutherans or the Anglicans, they all took our holy places and they put abominations in them. And that's all true, and I don't deny that. But it's because of those parallels between church history and the Old Testament you can see the definitive abomination is the Novus Ordo. And I would, also point out that Novus Ordo happened on a worldwide level, whereas the Arian heresy didn't, or the Lutherans or the Anglicans didn't. This is the one that you really couldn't get a greater abomination because there's nowhere left to abominate. It was done universally. So our Lord says that, and I go, oh my goodness, there's the Novus Ordo, right? So I'm going to go into the book of Daniel, like our Lord said, and I go into Daniel, and I see the prophecies in Daniel that mention the abomination. And I through the book, I plug in the dates for the Novus Ordo because we know specific dates for those things. We know Paul VI did it, in 1969 and then in 71, and I go through those dates and why they're relevant. And then in the process of plugging those dates in, the prophecies of Daniel unfold because one of Daniel's prophecies has a timeline in it. And so it's like a treasure map. If you get a map without a starting place, the map is useless. Like, you don't know where to start to find the goal. Like, take 10 steps north and 3 steps east. That's great, but where do I start? But so with this prophecy of Daniel, we have a starting place now, and the starting place is the Novus Ordo, right, in its historical context. And when I plugged it in, I'll put the graphic on the screen, but it's fulfilled. I mean, all the things in the prophecy come to pass in the course of church history. So, as by the way, in the footnotes of Daniel, it does tell you that this prophecy in Daniel was fulfilled in the Old Testament. So there's no arguing with that. But it was also pointed to as a future event by our Lord. He says, when you see it, right? So therefore, we have a future event to look forward to, and this looks like it's it. So I have that book of Daniel now, and I'm like, this is amazing. My jaw is dropping. And then in the course of reading more and more, now I'm motivated to read all the small print and all the footnotes everywhere I can find them, because now I'm on a treasure hunt now, and I see that I forget who or when or where, but it's been pointed out by very credible scholars and throughout the past that the book of Daniel, especially that prophecy in particular, shares a common structure with the book of the Apocalypse, and it points out how that's the case. So now there's a bridge now between Daniel and the Apocalypse. So basically, I'm following like the foundation from the parallels into Daniel, and that takes you into the Apocalypse. And then when I do that, the events of the book of the Apocalypse also can be seen to be fulfilled with Vatican II as well, right? And so that's the bridge, and I can try to explain it. I've been doing that in the course of my Divine Poetry series on your platform on Catholic Family Podcast. I've been slowly, episode after episode, kind of building the case. It's been taking me. It takes like half hour to build it, sufficiently. I can try to go through it quickly here, just in an overview. But it's gonna like be all this information like a fire hose like coming at you. But basically, I'll try to say this. Right. This is not going to mean a lot to people who haven't seen these episodes, but at least I'll give you a clue of what I'm talking about. Okay. In the prophecy of Daniel, the 70 weeks of years prophecy, there's something called the final week, right? So there's this period of 70 weeks, and there's the final in the 70th week, and that's when Daniel says the abomination is going to appear in the holy place at a midpoint of this final week. Now, I'm going to have to spare you all the details and the processes that I went through, but this final week that we're looking for in church history seems to me to be the Lateran Treaty of February 11th, 1929, and the resignation of Benedict XVI on February 11th, same date, February 11th, 2013. And it's a clean and neat 84 years in between there. And the Lateran Treaty, by the way, it established Catholicism as a state religion in Italy. And that's important because in the prophecy of Daniel, it says that he will confirm the covenant with many. And that's what the Lateran Treaty did. It confirmed Catholicism, which is the true covenant in the New Testament. It confirmed that with every Italian in the Italian peninsula. So check that box off, right? So the Lateran Treaty did do that. And so anyway, you have this 84-year period. Now, the abomination is supposed to appear in the holy place at the midpoint of this final week. So I'd like to point out that that 84-year period is divisible by 7. So a week is a unit of 7 things, right? So you can divide 84 by 7. You get each day of the week is equal to 12 years, right? And so 1971 was the year that Paul VI mandated across the board, without any option to say the Trinity Mass, he mandates the abomination, the Novus Ordo, and it has to be said now after that date everywhere in every church across the world. So by November 20th, 1971, every church-going Catholic would have seen the abomination on the second altar in their church. right? Which is paralleled by the Second Altar and the books of the Maccabees and all that stuff, right? And so 1971 is 42 years from both 1929 and 42 years from 2013. So it's exactly in the middle of this final week. And so I'm like, that's amazing. There's the abomination in the holy place at the midpoint of a final week. And then when I go through the rest of the prophecy in Daniel, I have to work backwards because the beginning of the prophecy says that you have to go, the prophecy starts with going forth from the decree to build Jerusalem. And so that's fulfilled in the Old Testament when Jerusalem is decreed to be rebuilt. In church history, the new Jerusalem is Rome, because in the Old Testament, that's where the temple was and the priesthood, the high priesthood, and all those things. In church history, that's Rome, right? So I went back the specified amount of time from the beginning of the final week, and I come to the election of Pope Nicholas V, and he was the one who announced the building of a new St. Peter's Basilica, the second one. He also announced the reconstruction of roads and fortifications. So he basically said, we're going to rebuild Rome and a new basilica. There it is, just when it was said to have been. And there's other details in there as well. Now, okay, that's Daniel. Okay, what relates to the book of the Apocalypse is the seven-headed beast out of the sea, right? So it's the second beast in the Apocalypse, and this is the beast that gains power over the saints. He crushes the saints, and he does so for 42 months. What I came to realize is that there's three, or I say 2 units of time that are used frequently in the Apocalypse, and one of them is 42 months, and the other one is 1,260 days. And when I did the math on them, I realized that all expressions are the same unit of time. 1,260 days is the same as 42 months, which is also the same as 3.5 years, right? So 3.5. So when the abomination appears in the holy place at the midpoint of the final week, it's as to say it appears after 3.5, because a week is a unit of 7, half of 7 is 3.5, right? So there's that 3.5 there, and those same units of time are being used in the Apocalypse. So when the seven-headed beast out of the sea has power over the saints for 42 months, it's another way of saying he has power over the saints for 3.5 times, right? And so I'm like, it's the same thing. That what's happening in the Apocalypse is the same thing that's happening in Daniel. It's all the same. It's just different imagery from different testaments and different books, but it's all describing the same event. And that event is the Novus Ordo, right? So what gives the beast power over the saints? Well, first of all, who are the saints? The saints can only be Catholics. There's no other question, right? So
Right.
how does the beast gain power over the saints? He takes the sacraments away. He changes our faith, right? Like the one thing that gives us the grace from heaven is taken away, and there we go. He has power over the saints. And so, and then from that bridge into the Apocalypse, all the rest of the Apocalypse unfolds, because now we have the starting place on the treasure map. We have the context now. We're looking in a certain context, and everything comes out to be like, look at that. There's all this. There's the mark of the beast. There's this. There's that. The other thing, and it's all in the context of Vatican II, which still gives me goosebumps. you know. Now I have to support all these things with. I mean, there's no question that there's a huge amount of very excellent and holy writings from saints and scholars that suggest other things, and I completely concede that. And I don't. I'm not. My goodness, but I have to say though that the Apocalypse is a mystical book, and it's hidden and it's veiled language. And I would have to say we can only see it in hindsight, because it's you can't predict prophecy into the future. I don't think that's what it's for. I think it's meant to be confirmatory for those who are going through it, and perhaps a consolation for those. And so if Vatican II is the persecution of Antichrist, the persecution of Antichrist, then I would say that any holy Catholic, devout Catholic before Vatican II, they couldn't have predicted it, because if they would have said, right, yeah. So therefore, of course, they're not going to be able to see how it's going to come to pass, because the one thing they can predict would be dismissed out of hand by anyone in the church before Vatican II. All right. So that's my explanation why I think this is divergent from a lot of the writings of saints and everything. So, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that, but what else can I say? It all locks together so well that I'm and it's so confirmatory for our experience as traditional Catholics. Whew. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. My brain is definitely blown,
I
but
know, me too.
in
Yeah.
a good way. In a good way. No, it certainly is something that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people in our world today, a lot of Catholics, do look at Vatican II as the abomination of desolation. I mean, a lot of these things I think do connect. So I think that basis is already settled with a lot of people. So I think
Yeah.
starting from there, people can see, okay, that's not a crazy thing to say, that the apocalypse is describing these times as well. I don't
Right.
think
Yeah.
that's not a jump that people aren't going to be able to accept. I think.
And that's fine. And even if they don't agree with the book, maybe they'll say all this looks true, Dominic, and all these things all match up perfectly, but it doesn't mean this is the Antichrist. Maybe it's just a prefigurement of the future one to come. That's fine. I'm not trying to say I'm right. That's not the point. I mean, the point of the book is simply to say that look how prophecy and sacred scripture and everything aligns to confirm the truths of the faith. That's really what my point, right? So like, if you still disagree, I'm not mad. I mean, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think even if you don't agree with the premise of the book and its conclusion, I think you're really going to like reading it, only because you're going to see, like, look at that. Like, there's the mass, there's the papacy, there's what we've all experienced as traditional Catholics. It's all there. And isn't it fitting, of course, that like the Bible is a Catholic book, right? I say that and some people sneer, not Catholics, right? Because it is a Catholic book, because it was given to us by the Catholic Church, by the Council of Carthage, I think, or something like that. And if, it just makes so much sense then that the truths of the Catholic faith would be highlighted and centered upon in biblical prophecy, right? So yeah, and there's more too. Like, so in the book of Daniel, there's like 6 places or 7 places in the footnotes where it over and over again says that Antiochus was that figure from the books of the Maccabees who puts up the second altar and outlaws the traditional Jewish practices. Antiochus is the prefigurement for the Antichrist. It says it like in 6 places in Daniel, right? So that is great information, but it's hard to say if it means anything to us until the parallels between church history and the Old Testament are manifest. Because when we see Vatican II as being paralleled by Antiochus, that really gave me pause, because it says in the footnotes that Antiochus is a prefigurement of the Antichrist. So I'm like, well, look at that, and then St. Alphonsus comes along, and he has a book about the Holy Eucharist. And in that book, this is cited in my book, by the way. He says that per the prophecies of Daniel, the Antichrist will cause the Holy Mass to cease upon the earth for 3.5 years, or 3.5 times, right? So St. Alphonsus is also pointing to the things that happened in the book of Daniel and the books of the Maccabees as what Antichrist will do in our time. So, I mean, some people could argue that the cessation of the Mass didn't quite take place fully yet. Maybe there was it almost took place, but it's going to happen again in the future. I would say, like, it substantially happened. Like 99.9% of like Catholic churches, lost the Mass. So like maybe you go for 100, but I mean, we're talking about like, fractions of percents here. Like, I would say like it substantially happened already, but again, I'm not going to stand on that argument. If you disagree, that's wonderful. No problem whatsoever. You're still my friend, and all that stuff. But yeah.
No, so I mean, I guess do you come in the end of your book to a conclusion? I guess I imagine people are wondering that too. Okay,
I do.
so wait, Dominic, how does this? And you don't have to
Yeah.
give it away, because we do want people
No,
to read the
I
book.
will. I will. Go keep on. Keep on saying. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that the question is, if you're saying it all kind of comes together, and obviously the Maccabees leads into then the New Testament.
Yeah.
So then, if that's the case, are we pretty much leading into the second coming of Christ? I mean, I guess in my mind that's kind of what
Yeah.
it has to be, right? You have to have the
Yeah.
Antichrist and then the second coming. I mean, but I have not studied this, so
Okay. Great.
again,
Great.
only
I
if you
love that
want
question.
if
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
tell me about it. I think to me that must be what it is. People are listening to this and be like, okay, and what happens?
I know, right? Of course. So, church history is parallel in the Old Testament. That's great. Okay, I'm trying to establish that. If you see Vatican II as Antichrist, the Antichrist, then Antichrist comes in the place of Christ. So, as you follow the Old Testament history, you eventually get to the birth of Christ, right? And then Christ has his public ministry. He dies and rose and ascended into heaven. And then after he ascends into heaven, there's like a 37-year period, or there's a couple decades between his ascension and the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Okay. In parallel, if Vatican II is Antichrist, then what happened to the Jewish temple, how it was formerly the house of God but became an apostate house of Satan, that's what happened to the Vatican for us, right? So just as the Jews would have been used to going to the temple, but all of a sudden now it's not God's house anymore, so too is that the same case with the Vatican. So at the coming of Antichrist, that same thing happened to us in parallel. So we're living in that time in parallel between the coming of Christ and the destruction of the Jerusalem. So a couple things corroborate that. Is it I forget, I was going to say Cornelius de Lapide or Ludwig von Ott, or many people have said that when our Lord spoke about in Matthew 24, when he spoke about the destruction of Jerusalem, he was both talking about the event that was going to happen in 70 AD and the end of the world. It's a dual prophecy. And you can find that it's probably even in the footnotes of the Catholic Haydock Bible, if I had to guess. I think it is. So therefore, like, what would parallel the destruction of Jerusalem at the end of the world? Now it's clear through these parallels that it's the Vatican, right? Because the Vatican is our new Jerusalem, it's our new temple. And even in just as King Solomon built a temple during the Renaissance, we built St. Peter's Basilica, the new one, during the Renaissance. So King Solomon's reign is like the Renaissance. They all share the same characteristics: art, architecture, wealth, and then corruption of God's people. Same things are happening in both instances. So anyway, another figure in the book of the Apocalypse is this great harlot. And the great harlot is said to sit on 7 mountains. And then St. John is told by the angel the great harlot sits on a beast of the 7 heads. And then St. John is told that 7-headed beast, those 7 heads are 7 mountains, and they're also 7 kings. So she sits on a thing with 7 mountains on it. The great harlot's also described as the great city, right? So Rome is the great city of the whole world. It was the center of the ancient world, and it's the center of the Catholic world after that. So the harlot is associated with Rome and with a city of 7 hills. That's Rome, right? It's clearly Rome. She's dressed in purple and scarlet, like the colors of priests, and, cardinals, and bishops. And she has a lot of ecclesial imagery associated with her. So much so that Martin Luther, when he broke from the Catholic Church, he read the Apocalypse and said, "Look, the Catholic Church is the great harlot," because his mind was free to believe that because he was a heretic. At that time, Rome was the Catholic Church, the bride of Christ. So it was the woman, the bride. But at the end times, it's going to be the antithesis of the bride. It's going to be the harlot, right? So here we see with our own eyes that the Vatican II sect in Rome is acting like a harlot. They do anything the globalists want. They'll sell themselves out for anything they want, like a harlot would do. So at the end of the book of the Apocalypse, the harlot is also destroyed at the end of the Apocalypse. Now, if that's the case, one more piece of evidence here. In the book of the Apocalypse, God says to the people who are in the harlot, he says, "Come out of her, my people," meaning come out of the harlot, lest you share in her plagues and punishments. So the question in my mind was, why are God's people in a harlot? If they're God's people, they shouldn't be there. How did they get into the harlot, and why don't they come out on their own? Well, we see that with the Novus Ordo system. Like, I came out of the Novus Ordo system, right? And it's like they're deceived to being in there. That's the only explanation as to why God's people would be there in the first place. So it all resonates. It all points to the same conclusion. So anyway, going back to your previous question, where are we now? It looks like we're in between that time between, as the early Christians were, in between the coming of Christ and the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. We're in that time period between the coming of the Antichrist, which is Vatican II and everything that happened, and the destruction of the great harlot or the apostate Vatican and such and such. So I mean, I have some more ideas about where precisely we are in that time period. And I get that conclusion based on the parallels between church history and the Old Testament. This is a whole other subject, but I probably should cool it for now. There's probably more information than anyone can handle.
Well, and it's good that truly we do want to save some stuff for the book. We want people to buy it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
no,
Right.
very extremely interesting, Dominic, as always. And really, really thought provoking. Really, and it really does make a lot of sense. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, and it's also kind of crazy, but it also makes sense. That's the amazing thing. It's kind of like I'm sitting here thinking like, well, that's crazy, but well, no, it's not that crazy. It's always it's really interesting. That's why, I mean, everyone, please do. Whoever's watching this, make sure you watch the Divine Poetry on Tuesdays as well. Exactly, because Dominic has a lot more time than today to go into each little detail and talk about it more at length. So you'll get a much better idea of what's happening, and a good time to do that now, or hey, even when you get the book, or both books, absolutely go and get it all. And while you're at it, like, share, subscribe. Click the notification bell on your YouTube channel. That will make it so you get notifications for everything. Dominic stuff is every Tuesday. We also do podcasts about once a month these days. Hopefully we'll continue doing that as well. It's interesting. It's just as interesting for me, and I always enjoy it. Again, Dominic will put up all the information on the screens where you can buy these books. Glorious Heritage. But I want to do it too. Look, watch this, Dominic. Look, this is the work I just put into that. Boom.
Oh, beautiful. All right.
I hope I spelled it all right.
Yeah.
GloriousHeritageBooks.com.
Yeah.
I'll let Dominic do all the other work and putting everything up
Right.
here. Please go check it out. Fidei email as well. Again, Dominic will hook you up with all the links. Check out,
Awesome.
again, Divine Poetry every Tuesday, and go to gloriousheritagebooks.com. And go to Patreon too. Support
And
Dominic
support
so that
Kevin's channel. Yeah, support Kevin. I
support me
really,
too. You can support me
yeah,
too on
yeah,
Patreon. I
yeah,
appreciate that as well.
yeah,
Um, support
yeah.
again anyone who's doing Catholic stuff. Fidei email, Glorious Heritage, Catholic Wire, Catholic Family Podcast, Crusader Films. There are people out there who are putting the Crusader Films just put out beautiful music videos, and they get a couple hundred views.
Yeah.
It's just not fair. It's a weird thing. We need to work on that as well. Please, Crusader Film Works, I should say Crusader Film Works. That's on YouTube. Beautiful content, really really good stuff. Good friends to the show. Check that out as well. Anyone you can support is doing Catholic content. Go and do it. You're gonna sacrifice one coffee a month or something, or cancel your Netflix and Amazon. I
Yeah.
think you can do that
Yeah.
anyway.
Please. Yeah.
But whatever it is that you're paying for, I really think that it's better to give. You don't have to give it to me. That's fine. It's not just a sales pitch for me. I really, really, really feel strongly about this. We got to support each other, and if you do, we can create more stuff. Dominic can write 2 series of books, perhaps, if we make sure we support each other. So please go do that. And again, like, share, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz. We will see Dominic around every Tuesday. And well, next time he has some project coming up, which will probably be in about 4 weeks from now. So
Well, I hope not.
it's
Yeah.
always something. Come on, Dominic, you got something up your
Yeah.
sleeve every month or so. You'll find something.
So,
Man.
I
No,
got
we
no burners
appreciate it.
left. I'm out of burners on my stove. Yeah.
I believe it. Well, Dominic, you take care of yourself. We'll see
All
you
right.
next time. Everyone else, God bless
Awesome.
you.